Human shield is a military and political term describing the deliberate placement of non-combatants in or around combat targets to deter the enemy from attacking these combat targets. It may also refer to the use of persons to literally shield combatants during attacks, by forcing them to march in front of the combatants. Using this technique is illegal by nations that are parties to the 1949 Geneva Conventions, the 1977 Additional Protocol I to the Geneva Conventions, and the 1998 Rome Statute. 20th century. World War II. After World War II, it was claimed by German SS General Gottlob Berger that there was a plan, proposed by the Luftwaffe and approved by Adolf Hitler, to set up special power camps for captured airmen of the Royal Air Force and the United States Army Air Forces in large German cities, to act as human shields against their bombing raids. Berger realized that this would contravene the 1929 Geneva Convention and argued that there was not enough barbed wire. As a result, this plan was not implemented. Wehrmacht and later SS forces extensively used Polish civilians as human shields during Warsaw Uprising when attacking the insurgents' positions. At the Wola massacre in Poland on 7 August 1944, the Nazis forced civilian women onto the armored vehicles as human shields to enhance their effectiveness. In Belgium in May 1940, at least 86 civilians were killed by the German Wehrmacht, known as the Vinct massacre, when the Germans took 140 civilians and used them as shields to cross a bridge while under fire. During the Battle of Okinawa, Japanese soldiers often used civilians as human shields against American troops. When the Japanese were concerned about the incoming Allied air raids on the home islands, as they were losing the controlled Pacific Islands one by one to the Allies in the Pacific War, they scattered major military installations and factories throughout urban areas. Therefore, historians argued that Japan was using its civilians as human shields to protect the legitimate military targets against Allied bombardment. As a result, the U.S. Army Air Forces was unable to strike purely military targets due to the limitations of the bomb sight, the mixing of military installations and factories with urban areas, and the widespread of cottage industry in Japan cities. This led the USAAF in early 1945 to switch from precision bombing to carpet bombing, which destroyed 67 Japanese cities with incendiary bombs, and the use of atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Korean War. In the Battle of the Notch, North Korean forces were claimed to have used captured U.S. soldiers as human shields while advancing. Persian Gulf War. One of the most famous uses of human shields occurred in Iraq in 1990, following the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait that precipitated the Gulf War of 1991. Saddam Hussein's government detained hundreds of citizens of Western countries who were in Iraq for use as human shields in an attempt to deter nations from participating in military operations against the country. A number of these hostages were filmed meeting Hussein, and kept with him to deter any targeted attacks, whilst others were held in near military and industrial targets. In 1991, during the operations in the Gulf War, the U.S. submitted a report to the UN Security Council denouncing Iraq for having intentionally placed civilians at risk through its behavior. The report cited the following examples of such behavior. The Iraqi government moved significant amounts of military weapons and equipment into civilian areas with the deliberate purpose of using innocent civilians and their homes as shields against attacks on legitimate military targets. Iraq Iraqi fighter and bomber aircraft were dispersed into villages near the military airfields, where they were parked between civilian houses and even placed immediately adjacent to important archaeological sites and historic treasures. Coalition aircraft were fired upon by anti-aircraft weapons in residential neighborhoods in various cities. In Baghdad, anti-aircraft sites were located on hotel roofs. In one case, military engineering equipment used to traverse rivers, including mobile bridge sections, was located in several villages near an important crossing point. The Iraqis parked each vehicle adjacent to a civilian house. Serbian aggression against Bosnia. Shortly after the ceasefire between Croat and Serb forces, the Bosnian Serbs launched an assault against the safe area of Gorazda, heavily shelling the town and surrounding villages. Protests and exhortations from the UN Security Council turned out to be ineffective, and on 10 and the 11th of April 1994, NATO launched airstrikes against Bosnian Serb positions. In retaliation, Bosnian Serb forces captured many UN personnel, using them as human shields at sites expected to be bombed. In a similar situation to what had happened in Sarajevo, an ultimatum was issued, and by the 24th most of the Serb troops had complied.